Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, Michael. Thanks for coming over here. Pleasure to have you.
How did you find out about Billy?
2013, I was at home and I had a lot of time on my hands. I recalled a story that my mother had told me when I was 8 or 9. I grew up in Ireland. She told me about an experience she had had when she was driving from Dublin to Derry, where we lived. She was driving along as a passenger in a car and she was looking up at the sky. It was a night sky. And she told me that she had seen something moving across the sky. And she thought initially shooting star. And then she saw it changing direction. And it did like a triangular movement across the sky. And it was almost like it went from star to star. So that to her was the first indication we didn't have that type of technology and so high up in the sky, and to be able to move like a vast distance and then abruptly change direction. Mm-hmm. She had believed that there was other life outside of this planet here. For several years, I would say that I was always looking up in the sky, looking for something. And I've always kind of been like that. I've always had my head looking up at the sky at night just to see if I could see anything. Actually, I remember a time when I was with my cousin. We were sitting in my mother's car and we had the seats back and we were looking through the skylight. This must have been late 90s. We were looking up at the night sky and we saw what looked like a moving star. And then that was followed by another moving star, followed by another moving star. So that was kind of cool. But now, later on, I believe that was probably a satellite, even in the early 90s. I mean, satellites go back, some time. Yeah, so that was what got me interested. And then in 2013, this story that my mother had told me came back to me. So I decided to go online and do a little Google search, about the possibility of, life outside of Earth, and just to see if other people were talking about it. And I was amazed to see that there was a lot of information popping up, on the internet. And one in particular that caught my attention was a guy called Michael Dolan, I think is his name.
Mark Dolan?
I think it might be Mike Dolan. Michael Dolan.
Okay.
Yeah. He's done a lot of stuff with the History Channel.
Yeah.
And he talks about the historical aspect, of UFOs and such things,
Yeah.
And so I went out and I bought his book and I spent, a couple of weeks reading that. And it really, I guess, my curiosity was deeper, than just UFOs. I was looking to sort of understand why they would have been visiting here and, what was there, if in fact there was, extraterrestrials visiting Earth, did they have belief systems? Were they spiritual people? So that kind of kept me looking. And not long after that, I came across Michael Horn. Watched several YouTube videos on from Michael talking about this gentleman called Billy Meyer. So once I had the name Billy Meyer, then I started searching, further, and came across various people. One individual was Wendell Stevens, and Wendell Stevens had done an investigation. Whenever you find something like this, you want to know whether it's true or not, or it's just a hoax. So I think anybody with any sense is going to, try to validate and prove to themselves the information that they've come across. So Wendell Stevens was one of the individuals who had actually done an investigation into the case. He pulled together several individuals, Lee and Britt Elders, and who was the other person?
Tom Welsh.
Tom Welsh, yeah. So these individuals had their own, they did work for Fortune 500 companies, I think it was.
They were involved in computer security.
Yeah, computer security. So, yeah, they were, investigators, trained investigators. And if I'm not mistaken, they even worked privately for the FBI and various government groups, might have been CIA, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure how far they were involved.
Yeah, but I know they did work for the government, various government organizations.
Yeah,
that's what
but
I've...
also for banks, I think, checking on their security.
Yeah.
So they did that kind of... So they had analytical stuff, you know. Yeah.
So their reputation, and well-trained was, it stood out to me as... legitimate, So Wendell Stevens and this group did this investigation. I think it was back in the 70s. They took a small film crew and they traveled over to Switzerland to interview Billy.
Yeah.
They put him through the ringer, basically, trying to, you could say, disprove, or not necessarily disprove, but see if what he was presenting was authentic. Yeah. So they had released a documentary called Contact. So that's what I had watched. I'd watched this documentary, which was an investigation into Billy Meyer material. They did a good job of proving the case to be absolutely authentic. But yeah, so that was kind of my introduction to the Billy Meyer material. Watched the movie Contact. Then I went out and bought, there was an investigative book. What was that called? For several years.
Yeah, Gary Kinder.
Light
Years.
Yeah, Light Years. So I read the book Light Years, and again, that was another individual who had done his own investigation, who was a total skeptic, and came away with, basically offered up information. He had his own opinion at the end of it, and I think he had validated for himself that it was the real deal, but left it really open to the individual reader to decide. And that was the same with Contact. It presented the information, but at the end of the day, the individual has to determine whether these things are true or not. It can't be based on belief. And that was, that's one of the things that's came through in my investigating this information myself, is that belief does not play a part at all.
Yeah.
At the core of the information is think for yourself. We need to verify whether that information is true or not. So that requires doing research, and research doesn't mean just picking up the first bit of information that somebody tells you or scientist tells you, because you'll often find that even scientists, present information, but then there's another scientist, two scientists that go to Harvard University could have, do a thorough investigation into something and come up with countering results. So it's important that we really dig into things and not just don't believe anything. It's one thing to investigate, but then it's another thing to read people, as individuals, their character, their history, all these things play a factor.
Even when, for example, when it comes to studies about global warming, it's very conclusive that there is global warming, yet the media always portrays it in a doubtful way. Not always, but again and again, because there are kind of special group interests that give advertising money to the media, and they don't want that because they would have to invest a lot to protect the environment, big corporations, which pollute the environment. So their interest is to keep kind of the confusion going, and influence the media in a negative way, that people have doubt if there's really global warming, even though the scientific reviews and investigations and studies are, there is global warming, it's like overwhelming. So just that can be, even the science can be also heavily manipulated, and it makes it difficult to have any clarity on anything.
The best example, I think, one of the best examples of that was this recent pandemic that we went through, about the vaccine.
Tell about that, because I didn't know that in Europe it was not like that.
Right.
Like every commercial break was kind of started with kind of, you shall get vaccinated, or what was it?
Advertisements from the companies that were pushing their solution, the vaccine. So there's a major conflict of interest there, which I think, it just amazes me, that's allowed,
It's especially since it was not FDA approved. It was just this emergency approval, and the inlet is blank, And then they all said, almost all the politicians said, "Yeah, get vaccinated." On what do they base their conclusions on? If it's not even FDA approved, and so that's again where people don't think, politicians just like parroting the narrative, that is pushed. And
the key word that you would often hear was believe the science. And
right.
The word believe the science, it goes counter to science. Science is not to be believed; it's always to be questioned. So it should have been question the science. Think for yourself. That should have been the front. So basically the underlying theme of the information, when I found the Billy Maher material, was think for yourself. And then the initial introduction to Billy was UFOs, but I've always been a very, I would say, spiritual person from a young age. I've always been curious, always asking questions. I grew up, my parents were not religious. They said, think for yourself, and that was kind of their motto as well, But I grew up in Ireland, and Ireland is, heavily steeped in religion, both Catholic and Protestant. And, in various times I would attend church just out of interest, growing up. So that's always kind of been there. But I think that freedom in my mind, there was no indoctrination from the beginning that you shouldn't, do this, you shouldn't do that. When that is done at a very young age, it creates a lot of fear. And that's basically how this whole control mechanism works, through religion. It's fear. You teach kids from a young age, if you do this, the devil's going to be coming after you, you're going to go to hell. So there's a constant battle that goes on, inside of the mind, which is really disruptive to the development of people.
What did you read, kind of? What books did you read when you found out? Contact reports, probably.
Yeah. So I began reading the contact reports. Anybody new to Billy's information will find that there's hundreds of contact reports between him and these extraterrestrials. So Billy had from a young age been in contact with extraterrestrials, and several of them became basically mentors to him. growing up. And all of those interactions, or many of those interactions, were recorded. There wasn't really a promotion of it. So reading the context, yeah, it's, what can you say about the contact reports? It covers everything, you know, from A to Z in life that Billy has had, and it's just so vast. So it's a good place to start, you know. Any questions you've ever had, you know, there's discussions really covering everything. Basically, the Pleiaren, who these extraterrestrials are called, are visiting with Billy in order to help us understand our true purpose in life. This universe, which they would describe as the universal consciousness or creation, is not a god, isn't an individual. It's a mass, you could say a mass of energy, and there are laws of nature, you could say, that basically all of everything within the universe is governed by. And it requires, in our evolution, it requires observation and questioning to basically find out the reality, the truth. Well, what does that mean? And basically, it's simple, you know, just in everyday life, searching for the truth. You know, so you have an interaction with somebody gives you some information. Is it true or not? You know, how do you find out if that's true or not? You might have to go away and, you know, and do a little bit of research, you know, and, you know, to really find out if it's valid or not, you have to, you know, not just, you know, the first bit of information that you get, you might have to, you really should be looking at several, you know, bits of information. So all of our interactions, you know, in life need to be questioned so that we can figure out whether it's true or not. And, you know, more times than not, if you really search hard, you're going to get an answer. And if you don't get your answer, then you don't, you know, you don't want to think one way or another about that. You know, it's not true, it's not false. It's just you have a neutral stance on it. And that's at the core of Billy's teaching. Nothing else. So everything that Billy writes is not to be believed, right? You know, Billy's been accused of being a hoaxer, a cult leader. And I don't know of any cult leader that encourages you as an individual to think for yourself, not to believe a word that he says, you know, and to investigate the information, to think about it, to contemplate it, you know. There's no cult organization out there that promotes, you know, freedom of thought.
Yeah,
it's just not there.
Have you talked with friends and family about it, and if yes, how did they kind of react to it?
Yeah. So, you know, initially when I found the information, I was quite excited, you know, that there was information that I had researched, investigated myself, you know, and verified for myself that it was true. So I was excited to tell friends and family. Quickly found out that it was not accepted. People had concern that I was losing my mind, you know. So I kind of pulled back, told my wife about it, and, you know, it was really just, you know, not something that she was interested in. So I respected that. It's an individual path, you know. Yeah. It's called the silent. It's been described as the silent revolution of truth because it's done internally. You know, this is our own pathway. Each of us are on a path to evolution as individuals, you know. And yeah, so most of my friends and family, I'd say all of them really were not really receptive at all, So I just pulled back from that,
Yeah. You made this documentary, The Way to Live. So why did you do that?
I was so inspired by the information, that early on I started making, small videos, trying to get the information out. So initially I started with a YouTube channel called Nature's Way, and I would just put out various videos about the material, right? Billy's contacts and Billy's discussions and what have you. And then 2019, I was always wanting to go to Switzerland, go to the Figu Center, to see it from my own eyes, to see if I could meet Billy, and ask him questions, you could say, I'd read and studied, investigated this information all these years. I think this was going to be, meeting the man, meeting the individual that's putting this information out there would be part of that investigation for me. So in 2019, it was a good time to go and visit. So I called a friend. I said, hey, would you like to go to Switzerland? And he says, oh yeah, definitely, let's go there. And I had, I had no intention of going there for anything other than just to check the place out and see if I can meet Billy and, other individuals who were interested in the material. But I got an idea that, about making a film, and I have no experience in filmmaking other than basic, camera work and editing and what have you. But I had this idea, and I posed it to some people that were also interested in this information, and several hundred people, got behind me and supported me. Yeah, I made a film called, it took 3 years.
The Way to Live.
Called The Way to Live, yep.
That's also the title of one of his books.
That's the title of one of his books, yeah.
You talk to overpopulation groups or managers of overpopulation groups. How did they, when you asked, they probably wanted to know who is that and so on. How did they react to it? Yeah,
so one of the themes in the film is discussion on overpopulation. People would say, well, what is overpopulation? And this is one of the things that, I've come to learn, which is discussed a lot in this information, is that our planet is overpopulated, right? So one of the main themes in the film is overpopulation. And, I reached out to several environmental groups, asking them, would they like to participate in this? But, overpopulation and environmentalism seem to, you would think that the environmentalists, would really focus at the core of the problem, which is overpopulation.
Yeah.
So that they really, a lot of them were not interested. And then even in the overpopulation, let's say, community, those people here, talking about the world being overpopulated. The other part of the film was about the teaching. So there's a part 1 and part 2. And I think when they found out, what the film was connected with, it really put the brakes on the film. And then we focused a lot on religion because, again, religion is really, you could say, at the core of overpopulation, right? Taking it one step further upstream, why is it that people don't recognize that the world's overpopulated? And it's because they're totally disconnected from reality. They're disconnected from nature. They just don't see it, so, and that's because of their belief systems. They're stuck in this little box. They don't know how to think. They don't know how to really thoroughly research and investigate things. So they ultimately never get to find the answers that are really required to navigate life. We need answers.
Yeah, and but some did talk to you, so
Yeah. So there, it's a small community of people that talk about overpopulation. So anytime anybody's going to be making a film about this topic, then there's support. So I had support from quite a few individuals in making the film, and a lady called Karen Tragg was really at the forefront of helping me. She has written several books, one of them called Move Upstream. And there was, and I'm still friends with Karen to this day. We talk quite often. And, it's just even those individuals, basically are marginalized within this movement of environmentalism. They're marginalized, because it's not profitable. The environmental movement is profitable for individuals, for organizations that are at the front of, so-called at the front of, finding solutions for the planet. But really, it's just become a joke,
Yeah. The big environmental organizations get they get millions
from their supporters.
Yeah, and also the foundations fund each other, and but when it comes to overpopulation, they don't get much money, But what I was really shocked about this one thing, where one of them says that he was offered money, a lot of money, if he drops that issue. That really surprised me. Billy was also offered a lot of money if he this guy who wanted to give him like 20 million or so, and then said if he and Billy would be kind of the boss, and basically taking over Figu,
Yeah.
And Billy said, "Oh, I can't do that," and then he was gone in 2 minutes,
Yeah, that was an individual that I interviewed in the film, a man called David Paxson was his name. He knew firsthand this individual that was asked to stop talking about overpopulation, and if he did, he would be given several $1 million. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, yeah, that's quite shocking.
Yeah, So your video is on YouTube, or?
Yeah, so it's free on YouTube, and for a short time there, it was on my website, natureswayfilms.com.
And festivals, how did they react?
Yeah, so I when the film was finished, obviously I wanted to try and get it out to the world, and put it in front of several film festivals, submitted it to film festivals, and you have to pay to get them into these film festivals. I think I had a small budget, maybe around $1,200, and it, a lot of the film festivals I submitted to were environmental, and it didn't go anywhere. People who I was really trying to get the film to was the environmental people. But when those doors closed, I just saw it as, pretty much a waste of time.
So you put it out on YouTube?
I put it out on YouTube, yeah, and it's there now.
For free.
Yeah.
You went to Hinterschmidt-Rüti, and how many times have you been there now? 2 or 3?
Yeah, so I went there in 2018. So I did actually meet Billy, but just in passing, and then the second time.
And the first time you came, you really wanted to meet him, and that didn't work out. You just saw him passing by somewhere.
Yeah.
And then second time, you you were chilled, and I don't have to meet him.
The second time around, I wasn't really that motivated to meet Billy. I was more interested in meeting the individuals that were also curious about this information, had studied, investigated this information over decades, and that was when I had a much more relaxed approach. And Billy, on several occasions had stopped and said hello, and so that was.
And then you met him.
That was a different experience. Yeah. Just what stood out is just basically that he's a normal guy, you know, running around, busier than anybody, you know, working around the centre. So, you know, there's no...
always busy.
Yeah, there's not this man sitting on a throne, you know what I mean? He's out there with his dirty jeans, dirty shirt, and he's getting his hands dirty, you know. He's a worker, you know.
Yeah, he really is, yeah.
So at the time that I had come to the centre, you'd only been there a few months yourself,
the first
right?
time, 2018, right. I was really new.
So you're on your own path, right, of investigating this?
Right, I was still kind of in this... well, I came from Tibetan Buddhism, and that was still kind of still strong in me, you know, and doing kind of rituals and meditation and so on, you know, and then I wasn't even clear if I would stay, you know, at that time, and then the next time, 2019, I was already in the house living there.
And that seems to be a common thread. Have you found that among people who are interested in this information, that they've been on a path of, you know, maybe some form of religion or other?
Yeah, they're all search, you know.
They're all searching.
I think that's the most common thing, that they all search and then come across the information, whether it's the photos or a book of his, or and then like when I ask people, how did you find out about Billy, I would say like 70%, 75% see the photos first, and that's kind of become curious, and then they start to research and read the books or contact reports, and
so there was a questioning their own maybe religion or whatever, you know, not having doubts about it, and then doing a search, you know, through books or online, and just kind of coming across it.
And also that many were not, even though they maybe grew up with a religious background, that they weren't heavily indoctrinated. You know, I haven't met anyone who you would call like a fundamentalist, or has been like a fundamentalist upbringing. That is creates such a huge obstacle to think for yourself, that it's really so ingrained in your personality, kind of, or consciousness, that it's difficult to overcome that, because you have to unlearn first, you know, before you can put new information in, basically. You know?
I see that in my own kids, you know, like I don't push this information, but what I do, encourage them to think for themselves. So they're not put into a box, and I can see a huge difference in kids that, you know, they have friends with, that are really put into a box, you know, and told this is the only way you're allowed to think. And, you know, whereas, you know, if my kids have questions, I'll try to answer it, and I'll say, don't believe what I'm telling you, you know, just, that's what daddy has found out to be true, but you've got to go and you've got to look for yourself, ask your own questions, you know, and that freedom, I think, has really helped development much. You know, they're just so they're much more knowledgeable, and just, you know, in that framework, you know what I mean? So
you I can tell you just watching observing your kids, you know, that they're kind of open, and they're not stuck in a frame or box, you know, in their thinking. That's a joy to watch. You know? And then they will have it easier, you know, in life, if they're not stuck, you know, because whenever you're confronted with opposing views, and you're indoctrinated, well, you're kind of in trouble, you know, for yourself, you know, having to face that. And they don't have that problem. You know?
So
whatever they find, you know, information, they can absorb it, you know, without having to having these inner obstacles, you know. And I mean, you can do it, of course, even if you've been very religious and you know, very highly indoctrinated. It's possible, you know, to undo it, but that usually requires like if there's like let's say you're in a sect or so, and then there's you were abused or so. But then at some point they questioned this whole, indoctrination and so on, But
it's really a rewiring of the mind, because the circuit board is wired a certain way, very rigid circuit board.
Yeah.
And now, it's trying to rewire that. It's not easy.
Yeah. Or that maybe someone close to you dies or so, and then you also sometimes question a lot more, and then if you don't find like proper support in that group or so, and you say, hey, this they don't answer my questions, and then maybe there's change or so, or disease, that people get very sick or so, and then life-threatening, and then sometimes they think deeper, and question more, but it rarely happens. It's really big problem. And I also asked Billy about it. It seems to me that your material is for the future generations, that they kind of pick up on it while they're not so indoctrinated, and then like you raise your kids without this indoctrination, and then they most likely will do that too, and so on, and that it kind of every generation there will be a kind of small step towards more pre-thinking and but it doesn't have to be that way, but in general it's easier with the next generation than just that the people who govern us, if you walk to them and say, hey, this is wrong, they don't change their ways, you can rather hope for or that the new politician might be better, but it's also Billy who talked to Sadat or so, he warned him, that he will be assassinated,
Sadat.
In Egypt, Prime Minister of Egypt, and the 70s or when it was, and then beginning of the 80s, I don't know. And then he talked to him, and first they're shocked, of course, to somebody appears there, but and then I said, what do you say? Oh, well, I'm so-and-so, and they usually quickly kind of settle down, 1 or 2 minutes, and then
so the Play-Iron facilitated this?
Right. Semyaza, I think, facilitated that. Right. He wanted to meet him. And she said, forget about it. It's not. It's gonna happen. You can't change it anymore. It's too late.
Yeah.
And then I want to try. So he tried, but they don't react to what they just keep going with their thinking, with their actions, and then of course it happens as it's kind of has to happen, maybe, but and so even if people do get the information, they don't change their ways, even if it's their own death, their own life is all.
That's how strong they're.
I mean, what can be a strong argument? Well, you will die if you keep going like this, And he didn't take the precautions to, change events or so, and that he would not be assassinated, and then it was happening like that, And this was totally mind-boggling to me, that people wouldn't, change a little, at least, their ways, They are so stuck in their thinking and in their, they're usually, most of them, these powerful people are power obsessed, and think they all know better, and so, and even if you tell people the future, and as Billy does, they're not listening.
That's one of the, following the film. We had a very close relationship, I would say, with my wife's family, and following the film, they found out about the film. It wasn't something that I really promoted, at all. We didn't really speak about it in the family. It was no secret. The reaction to the film was, you could say within the community of people that are interested in this material was very good. But obviously, I was trying to reach individuals who had not understood the creation energy teaching, that Billy writes about. The film really, unfortunately, didn't do that well. I played the film at several festivals, but
What did the family say?
Yeah, so when my family found out about the film, actually, that was about a year and a half ago. Unfortunately, they reacted really negatively and a little bit freaked out, which is, I could understand, because it wasn't something really I, was public about, you know what I mean? Or I told them about, it was no secret, but I knew that they had their own, beliefs about certain things, and we all pretty much had a good relationship, so I didn't want to disrupt that relationship, you know what I mean? So I didn't find it necessary to talk about. But when they found out about the film, my parents' family in particular thought I was living this ulterior life, and you thought my wife didn't know anything about it, and basically accused me of being in a cult, and to cut a long story short, give my wife, two options, and that was either leave me or lose them, and my wife knew that, she had been studying this material since 2013, she had met several individuals, friends that I'd met over the years that were interested in this material. I knew it was really quite harmless, It wasn't anything I was pushing. It was just more of a self-development material that I, had become interested in and studied, But yeah, so unfortunately, my wife and I, but, mainly my wife was shunned, from her family. And these are people that, her mother, she spoke to every single day, so that was, that's just been very difficult, for her.
Yeah, that is very sad.
But, really, I'm proud of the fact that she stood by what she knows to be, the truth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's it.
Yeah, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great work.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And enjoyed my time here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Michael. I appreciate you coming over and taking the time. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we meet in Hinterschmidt again.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Michael.